Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. We love to get into the nitty-gritty of all sorts of topics, and today we are talking about something that's so central to so many of us, and that is, emotional intelligence, but specifically in the context of love and relationships.
Ooh, love and relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we've been going through this material called Emotional Intelligence in Love, and I have to say, it's really made me question some of the classic relationship advice that we hear all the time, just communicate more or find someone who's compatible. It makes you wonder if there's something deeper going on, right?
Yeah, what's the secret sauce that makes some relationships really thrive?
Totally. It's like the secret ingredient.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to unearth today. And I'm so excited to have you here with me to dissect all of this because I know you have such a deep understanding of, the psychology of relationships. And
I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. So, in this deep dive, we're going to really explore what emotional intelligence or EQ actually means when it comes to love, why it's so crucial, and we're going to get really practical, okay? We're going to talk about how to recognize it in your own relationships, and more importantly, how to actually cultivate more of it.
Yes.
And we're also going to touch upon those tricky dynamics that can happen when, one partner maybe isn't as emotionally intelligent as the other.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so let's just dive right in. What does this source material actually say about what emotional intelligence is?
Okay, so the material really breaks it down. It gives us this nice definition, which is essentially that emotional intelligence is like a set of abilities.
Yep.
Okay. It's the ability to, first of all, just know what's going on inside of you emotionally, to understand your own feelings, and what sets them off.
Right.
And then it's about managing those feelings effectively instead of, letting them control you or, lead to behaviors you regret later. And then there's the empathy piece, right? So that's being able to put yourself in your partner's shoes, truly understand their perspective, even if you don't agree with it. And then it's about using all of that to navigate those, social interactions that we have all the time with sensitivity and awareness. And it's kind of
So it's like putting all of that into practice.
Yes, exactly. It's like emotional maturity in action.
I love that emotional maturity in action because it's one thing to, read about these concepts in a book, but it's a whole other thing to actually see it play out in a relationship, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So give us some tangible examples of how does this emotional intelligence thing show up in a relationship?
Okay, so picture this. You're having a conversation with your partner and they're telling you something that's important to them. You're actually listening, really listening without, already thinking about what you're going to say back or how you're going to defend yourself.
Right.
You're just taking it in, trying to understand their perspective. That's emotional intelligence.
I feel like that's so rare, to really just listen without...
It's a practice.
Yeah.
And then it's also about expressing your own needs and feelings in a way that's direct and respectful.
Right.
Without, resorting to passive-aggressive jobs or just shutting down completely.
Right.
It's about being honest and open without blaming or attacking. And the material also talks a lot about the power of a sincere apology.
Ooh, the apology. Yeah.
Right, because a genuine apology isn't just saying, I'm sorry. It's about showing your partner that you understand how your actions affected them and taking responsibility for that without making excuses or trying to shift the blame.
Yeah.
That's a huge sign of emotional intelligence. And then there's the ability to show compassion even when you're in the middle of a disagreement, when things are heated.
Right.
That's what keeps you connected even when you're working through something tough.
That's so important. Okay, so we're starting to paint a picture of what emotional intelligence or EQ looks like, but why is this so important in love? Why does this matter for relationships that last?
Well, the material makes a really interesting point. It talks about what happens when emotional intelligence is missing from a relationship.
Okay.
You can imagine those little everyday annoyances, those little things that happen in every relationship. They can quickly escalate into big blowouts.
Right.
Because without that EQ, you have misunderstandings that just fester and breed resentment.
Oh, yeah.
And pretty soon, one or both partners end up feeling like they're not being heard, like their feelings don't matter. And that's when you get that disconnect.
Yeah. And it's you keep having the same argument over and over again.
Exactly. You're not actually resolving anything. You're just going in circles. But when EQ is present, it's like everything changes.
Okay. How so?
Well, the material talks about how emotional intelligence really speeds up the process of building trust in a relationship. Because when you consistently feel like your partner sees you, hears you, and respects your feelings, it creates this foundation of safety. And that safety allows you to be more vulnerable with each other. And that vulnerability is what deepens the connection.
Makes sense. And then when it comes to those inevitable disagreements,
Yeah.
instead of, those becoming huge fights, emotional intelligence helps you navigate those conflicts in a more skillful way.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You're approaching it with empathy and a genuine desire to understand each other so you can actually work through the issue instead of just letting it create this huge rift between you. And so ultimately, emotional intelligence is what helps you create a relationship where love feels like a source of security and comfort instead of this constant battle.
I love that because so often we hear, love is a battlefield and
Right.
and it's like, no, it doesn't have to be. If you have that emotional intelligence, it can be a source of, peace and growth and all of that good stuff.
Exactly. And the material makes this really powerful comparison. It talks about the difference between reacting with, like, I'm angry, so I'm shutting down.
Oh, yeah.
Versus saying, I'm feeling hurt and I want to talk about it.
Wow.
And that just sums it up perfectly, right?
Yeah, it's that one tiny shift, but it makes all the difference.
It does, because the first one, that shutting down, it might seem like you're avoiding conflict in the moment, but you're actually creating more distance, or you're leaving your partner feeling abandoned and probably even more upset.
Right.
But the second one, even though you're expressing a difficult emotion, you're opening the door for connection and resolution.
Yeah.
You're saying, hey, I'm hurting, but I'm still here. I still want to work this out with you.
That's so powerful. Okay, so we're really starting to understand why this emotional intelligence is so important. But how do we actually spot it? How do we know if it's present in a relationship?
Okay, so the material lays out 5 really clear signs of emotional intelligence in a relationship.
Yeah,
So
let's hear them.
let's break them down. The first one is self-awareness. And that's all about knowing your own emotional state and what triggers those emotions,
Yeah.
So, for example, instead of just snapping at your partner when you're feeling overwhelmed, a self-aware person would recognize that feeling and say something like, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. And that simple act of naming the emotion is so powerful.
It is, because it gives your partner the information they need to understand what's going on instead of them just feeling attacked or blamed for your reaction.
Exactly. It prevents all those assumptions and misinterpretations. And the second sign is self-regulation. So that's the ability to manage your emotions in a healthy way
Okay.
instead of letting them lead to, destructive behaviors. So an example of this would be, if you're in a heated argument, instead of just lashing out with a hurtful comment,
Right.
you take a breath, you pause,
Yeah.
you give yourself that moment to collect your thoughts and choose a more constructive response.
It's like hitting the pause button on your emotions for just a second so you can respond in a way that's, aligned with your values and what you want for the relationship.
Exactly. It's that intentional choice. And then we have empathy, which is really the foundation of any strong connection.
Yes, empathy for sure.
And this is about being able to understand your partner's feelings and see things from their perspective, even when you disagree with them. So instead of just immediately defending yourself, you ask questions like, how did that make you feel?
Yeah.
You prioritize understanding their experience, even if you don't agree with their conclusion.
It's putting the connection before being right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the fourth sign is healthy communication, which we've touched on a bit already, but it's so important.
Yeah.
And this is about being able to clearly and respectfully express your needs and feelings without blaming or accusing your partner.
Okay.
So instead of saying something like, you never listened to me,
Yeah.
which puts them on the defensive,
Right. Yeah.
you might say, I feel unseen when you're on your phone during our conversations.
Right.
And it's subtle,
Yeah.
but it makes a huge difference because you're focusing on your experience and how it makes you feel without attacking them.
Yeah. It's like owning your own feelings rather than, making it their fault.
Exactly. And then the fifth and final sign is accountability, which is so crucial for, navigating those inevitable conflicts and repairing any ruptures that happen in the relationship. And accountability is about being willing to own your mistakes without getting defensive or trying to make your partner feel bad for bringing it up.
Right.
It's about sincerely saying, I was wrong, and then actually taking steps to do better next time.
I love that. And I think what's so encouraging is that emotional intelligence isn't something you're just born with or you're not. It's something that you can actually develop over time.
Absolutely.
Like it's a skill that you can work on. So what are some practical things that people can do to cultivate more emotional intelligence?
So the first thing the material really emphasizes is the importance of pausing before you react, especially when you're feeling those big emotions like anger or frustration. It sounds simple, but it's so powerful. They even suggest trying to create a 5-second pause before responding.
Okay, 5 seconds. Yeah.
And that little bit of space can make all the difference. It gives you a chance kind of to step back from that initial emotional wave and choose a more thoughtful response.
Yeah, like you're not just reacting from that knee-jerk emotional place. You have a moment to actually think about what you want to say and how you want to say it.
Exactly. And then the next step is to actually name your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just saying, I'm upset, try to get more specific, like I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling disconnected, or I'm feeling really appreciated. And the reason this is so powerful is because it brings awareness to the specific emotion you're experiencing. And that awareness can help you feel more in control of it.
It's like you're taking this big, overwhelming feeling and you're giving it a name. You're putting a label on it.
Exactly. And that can be really grounding. And the third step is practicing active listening. And this goes way beyond just hearing the words your partner is saying.
Okay.
It's about really focusing your attention on them making eye contact, putting away your phone, all those things that show them you're fully present, and then reflecting back what you've heard to make sure you understand them correctly.
So it's listening to understand, not just listening to respond.
You got it. And the fourth step is to ask questions instead of making assumptions.
Oh, that's a good one.
So instead of just assuming, what your partner is thinking or feeling, ask them directly. How are you really feeling about this?
Right.
And that open curiosity can prevent so many misunderstandings.
Because our assumptions are often wrong.
Oh, so often.
Yeah. And the last step the material talks about is getting curious about yourself. So what does that mean?
Well, it's about really taking the time to understand your own emotional patterns, your triggers, your needs. And the best way to do this is through practices like journaling, mindfulness, meditation, or even therapy.
Yeah.
The more you understand yourself, the better you'll be able to navigate your own emotional world, and the better you'll be able to connect with others in a healthy way.
It's like that saying, know thyself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the importance of emotional intelligence, what it looks like, how to cultivate it. But what happens when there's an imbalance in a relationship? Like when one partner is much more emotionally intelligent than the other.
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, the source material talks about that too. So
it does, and it can be really tough because it can create a lot of strain on the relationship.
Yeah.
The partner with higher EQ might feel like they're always the one having to be the calm and rational one.
Right.
While the other partner might withdraw or lash out or just be really unpredictable with their emotions.
Yeah, and that can leave the other partner feeling like they're walking on eggshells all the time.
Exactly, like they're constantly worried about saying or doing the wrong thing and triggering a reaction.
So what can people do in that situation?
Well, the material gives some really good advice. The first thing it says is to lead by example.
Oh, okay.
So basically you continue to model that calm, empathetic communication. Even though your partner might not be doing the same, you're showing them what healthy emotional expression looks like.
Yeah.
And the second thing, and this is really important, is to set boundaries.
Boundaries. Oh, yeah.
You can't take responsibility for your partner's emotions.
Yeah.
You can't force them to become more emotionally intelligent.
Right.
But you can protect your own well-being by setting clear boundaries around what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not.
Yeah, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And the third thing is to encourage growth, but don't try to force it.
Yeah.
You can gently suggest things like therapy or books or whatever might be helpful.
Right.
But ultimately, the motivation to change has to come from them. You can't make someone grow if they're not ready.
And the source emphasizes that emotional intelligence in a relationship has to be a two-way street.
Yes, it does.
It can't just be one person carrying all the weight.
It's a partnership. It takes both people being willing to put in the effort.
I love that. Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that emotional intelligence in love goes way beyond, just feeling happy together or having fun.
Oh, absolutely.
It's really about creating a foundation of safety and security.
Right.
And that comes from, both partners being emotionally intelligent.
And when you have that foundation of safety, that's when you can really thrive. You can feel seen and understood. You can feel secure even when you're working through tough stuff. And you can truly be loved for all of who you are.
Yeah, you can be your messy, complicated, emotional self and still feel loved and accepted.
Exactly. And so as you're reflecting on all of this, think about how cultivating your own emotional intelligence can not only transform your romantic relationships, but also all your other relationships, your friendships, your family, your work relationships.
Oh, yeah.
it really is a skill that can enhance every area of your life.
That's such a great takeaway. I love that. Well, this has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me. It's given me a lot to think about, and I hope it's done the same for you.
It's been my pleasure.
Wonderful. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Bye, everyone.